We'll call this meeting to order, and the purpose of our being here today is we have a Zoom meeting with representatives from the engineering firm of DLZ. We're going to be discussing matters pertaining to the Dollar General project. And with us on the Zoom link is Mr. Scott Carnegie. And Scott, right now I'm going to turn this over to you and let you explain to everybody what you want to discuss, and we'll get started.
All right. Thank you, sir. Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
All right. So if we could just real quick maybe to go around and look at just different people attending from various locations. From DLZ, we have Eric Rath, Scott Carnegie, Robert Willie, Electrical, you'll hear from him in just a moment. We have Bill Stark. Then you also have Josh Appling and Siddharth. They'll be talking to you here just momentarily regarding mechanical, plumbing, and fire protection systems. We also have Lori Christie, who's our business development. You all, I know her very well. Who else we have on there?
Well, I can see we have Nick Henry from Wally Jail. We have Mickey Whitick from Stanley, and we have looks like Kay Riker Payton from the Legion.
No, this is Kay Riker Payton from Fayette County Council.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There we go. There's the Legion. Sorry.
Yeah, this is Pat Shader from the Legion.
Okay.
On the hardware side of things. Yep.
My apology, Kay.
So we issued a meeting agenda with the meeting request for this meeting, and we're sharing screen. So we have the agenda up on the screen. From 2:30 to 3, we'd like to talk to you about the mechanical, plumbing, and fire protection systems, as well as the electrical and IT. And then when we're done with that, at or around 3 o'clock, we'd like to talk to you about door hardware, that being both builder's hardware and retention hardware and security electronics, because they're all integral. And then when we're done with that, we'd like to review the architectural floor plan with some cut sheets of typical equipment, furnishings, the building name, and just a brief overview of the cost estimate and budget and proposed alternate bid options. So with that said, Josh and Siddharth, you guys want to review the mechanical, plumbing, fire protection systems?
Yep, I'll review that from the mechanical end. I'm going to go ahead and take over sharing the screen here.
First Mick. Sure.
Okay, I think everybody should see my screen now.
Can you make it a little larger, Josh, please?
Yeah, I already actually do some stuff too. Okay, so I'm just going to go over, I won't go over super in-depth on the very detailed items, but I want to go over a general system overview of the main components, and then if there are any specific questions or concerns, I can certainly dive into more detail as needed. So the general approach we are taking from an HVAC standpoint is we're going to go with a couple packaged rooftop units. So these would be gas-fired heating and direct expansion cooling, actually somewhat similar to the units that previously served that Dollar General building years and years ago. So one of the units is going to be dedicated to the housing area where you can see all this duct work. And essentially what we're going to do is that's going to be a multi-zone variable air volume unit with variable air volume boxes serving each of the zones. So this allows us to provide a dedicated thermostat essentially to each of the day room and sleeping areas to provide for better control just because they have different exterior exposures. These will be fan-powered VAV boxes. This helps get a constant airflow just because there's a pretty good amount of exhaust air needed in each of these spaces due to the number of plumbing fixtures and showers. These VAV boxes will have hot water reheat coils on them, so there will be a small boiler system located down here in the mechanical room with a couple pumps that will then supply the hot water to these VAV boxes and potentially to a couple other various unitary type of units, so maybe like a unit heater or other convector somewhere as we keep detailing the design. So that's essentially going to serve, when I say that air handler, it's basically serving everything from, hopefully you can see my cursor, from basically the lobby north is all off that air handler. We will have a second air handling unit that's going to serve what I'm going to call the admin space, so the staff break room, office, lobby, and these restrooms. That will be a smaller package rooftop unit that will be a single zone variable air volume unit, because in a space like this, it looks like we can put a thermostat in the one office, and that's going to cover keeping the space at least fairly comfortable. There's not as much varying occupancy, I don't believe, in this area compared to the others, so I don't see the need for a VAV box. Now, certainly from the owner's standpoint, if you would like to see that zoned a little bit differently, we can do that. Just understand that does add a couple VAV units that will add some cost. But it's a pretty simple system. The air handler, the rooftop units themselves are pretty standard. Again, what you see in a lot of light commercial type situations. And we believe that provides a good approach from a zoning standpoint for the county and also from a cost standpoint. So that's the general approach from a heating and cooling standpoint. There is a couple other items I want to touch on the HVAC side, but I wanted to see if there were any questions or concerns before I move on.
To be clear, separate from the jail, and this system with everything, all controls, everything would be only from this facility?
So, and that's something I was going to move on to next. So, yeah, as it says, it is a separate system from the jail, but we would be providing some direct digital controls on this system, a DDC system. That's an industry standard control system. I would recommend that just because of the VAV boxes, and that type of system comes standard. Essentially, you access the interface through a web interface to get to the front end. I would guess that most likely your system at the existing jail is pretty similar. And really my big question from the county standpoint would be whether there is a central system or manufacturer you've been using at all your facilities with a centralized interface that we need to tie into, or if it's okay that it's standalone.
Joey, now you and Michelle, anytime you feel the need to speak up in this, you go ahead and do it, because you two are more attuned to this than we are.
Currently, corrections is standalone, and it seems to work for us because sometimes certain parts of the building, like where the sun hits it all day, is warmer, so you can turn it down, where the other side is cold. We've got standalone, I think there's 4 different thermostats throughout the building that control areas that we can set.
Okay, yeah, so that would be similar to what we're proposing here. So that's going to allow you, like you said, there's going to be portions of the building that are going to be in a require cooling, while a portion may require heating or more cooling, less cooling. So the way we have that set up with these individual boxes will provide that opportunity. And if you look at the plans I have on the screen, essentially this box FPV 1-5 serves this area, these 4 cells in the day room. 1-1 serves this day room along with the bed area in that restroom. 1-2 serves this day room and associated spaces. Same there. So I think you can see how it goes. It's set up pretty well, so you don't have a thermostat where the folks, let's say in this day room, are getting overcooled because this corner space needs more cooling or heating. So that is how we have it set up here. So that sounds similar to what you're doing at the corrections.
I would rather have it where there is controls we can access, because it's like today, it was super cold over in the jail. We had to call Bill to come in, and there's just not a thermostat you can go and change anything. So I would rather it be something we can access ourselves.
Yeah, and that's what this would be, and there would be training along with the HVAC control system that gets installed. So the county would be trained on it, on how to access it, and where you could adjust some user set points, so items such as temperature. And just know that when you get that training, there's a way to set that up as a tiered access, so you can set certain people to have much more access to be able to adjust items than other people. I'm sure, as folks are well aware, on a system like this, if you adjust it, you got to be careful and have somebody that knows what they're doing, because you can get it all out of whack pretty easily if you're not careful. But again, this system's a little more straightforward, I would say, than you would see in, for example, on a larger jail facility. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so another item that I wanted to touch on, so we did just touch on the controls. In the housing areas, because this is considered a I3 occupancy, where you don't have obviously operable windows and breakable windows, and people can't just, enter and leave the areas whenever they want. We do intend on designing with a small smoke control fan for each one of these day rooms. So my belief and my interpretation of the code is it's required due to that I3 occupancy. So we will be providing that here. And again, this actually ends up, though, being a little more straightforward than on some larger jails, just because they're smaller spaces. But there will be an exhaust fan, and that exhaust fan will also have the ability to do a manual purge. So if for some reason you had to, let's say, deploy some OC spray in a space, you have a way to pull air out of the space and exhaust it. And then the last HVAC item I was going to touch on is this electrical IT communications room. That will have its own unit. That will be a ductless mini split system. So it'll be a high wall unit that sits in that room, and it'll have a dedicated condensing unit on the roof, and that'll just provide cooling to this space specifically. And that's a fairly common approach. I wouldn't be surprised if you have this exact type of unit in some spaces in some of your facilities. In fact, I thought I recall seeing one on the jail. So that's the overall HVAC approach. Are there any items from the county's standpoint that I haven't touched on that you may have questions regarding?
Josh, I got a couple of questions on the HVAC system, or any of the system there. Is there any proprietary equipment involved in this, in your plan?
No. Anything we would be speccing would have multiple competitors that would be able to bid on it. But one area you gets a little squirrely on the HVAC side can be the controls, but they're all technically a backnet system. But I'm sure the county's had to deal with it. With some of these HVAC control manufacturers, it's hard. They protect things, so we do what we can with it, but it will be specified where multiple people can bid on it. We're not intending to sole source anything at this point.
Okay, well, we have eliminated the proprietary controls in the current jail, and we really don't want to pick up any new ones with this project.
Okay, so are you saying you want to have the same manufacturer that you have at the jail?
That probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Why do you say that, Joey?
If you're on call,
Yeah.
anyways.
Josh, could you do that as part of a base bid?
So that's what I was gonna suggest. So if you could get me the manufacturer of your existing system, what I would recommend would be bidding that as a base bid and then allowing an alternate bid for a list of other manufacturers. Obviously, that would keep that manufacturer more honest because they still have competition, but then it would allow the county to see what the cost adds, if any, would be to stick with that system and make a decision from there.
Okay. My other question is on the plumbing.
Yep, and I was gonna touch on plumbing next, but go ahead and ask your question, and maybe we'll something I was already gonna discuss.
Okay. What I was going to ask was when it comes to servicing the plumbing that will be connected to the sanitary sewer, how accessible is that system going to be from on top of the floor?
Okay, yeah, so, and that's a great question, in particular as it relates to any jail, because we know that inmates unfortunately like to flush items and create problems, and that typically happens on your sanitary system. So we will be working with architectural, and we have already started to do that for the chases right here to make sure we have plenty of access doors. In fact, we'll probably even look at this and make sure there's enough added here to where you can access the cleanouts on the back of the fixtures. Each of the security fixtures will be provided with a pinned cleanout to at least hopefully if a blanket or a shirt or something gets flushed, that it gets caught at the fixture instead of 20 feet away from the fixture underground where it's a lot harder to clear. But yes, we will be looking at reviewing access door locations to make sure wherever there is a cleanout that the facility folks can get to it.
Well, that is a constant and ongoing problem at the jail right now, and we have to actually disconnect pipes in the basement of the jail in order to clear some of these clogs. Now, in this building, we won't have the advantage of having a basement, so having proper access to that plumbing is going to be very important.
Yep, no, I agree 100%. And in fact, our design's still obviously in the works, but I made a note to make sure we provide additional extra cleanouts as needed as well. So even, let's say something makes it past the fixture itself, if we have plenty of cleanouts in the line itself, it'll be easier to access and snake a drain if you need to. So Siddharth and I will make sure we add sufficient cleanouts to help with that. And what would probably make sense, and Siddharth, let's make a note to do this, once we have our layout, what we believe to be complete, we'll send over an email with a PDF and highlight those locations for the county to review if you would like. That way you can mark if you think any more are needed or you have any concerns with a particular area.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up. I want to make sure it wasn't overlooked.
Oh, absolutely not. This is not my first rodeo with jails, and yeah, that's the biggest complaint on any correctional facility, quite honestly. It's pipes getting jammed up, so I absolutely make sure we're addressing that. As far as other plumbing items, on the water heater side, it will be a gas-fired storage tank type water heater, so pretty typical water heater. We are intending on providing a water softener. I do recall when I was walking around your existing facilities in that area that there were water softeners. That's always highly recommended, especially with security fixtures, because they just have components that are associated with the flushing and on-off mechanisms that you want to make sure you don't have any hard water, because it will create more maintenance headaches. So we are planning on a water softener unless there's any objections. And so you know that water softener will be located in this mechanical room that will have access from the exterior for the maintenance folks, and we'll be sure as we're laying out that mechanical room that obviously there's a path to get salt mix in and out. Okay. One item that I did want to discuss, and this will probably come up later in the meeting when talking some budgetary items, is whether the county wants to provide an electronic water management system for the security fixtures. I don't recall if you had one in your existing jail. I don't think you did. But what that is there's electronic solenoid valves at each of these fixtures, and it allows a couple things. So it'll allow the facility, if you need to cut water to a fixture because somebody's trying to flood the day room, or you need to do a shakedown to see if it prevent anybody from flushing contraband, you can do that through the system. But where it's actually really beneficial is it limits, you can set parameters to limit, for example, the number of times a toilet can be flushed in and out. So it's preventing flooding, but it's also preventing people just flushing it for the heck of it and wasting water. It's a pretty common system. Honestly, I can't even think of the last time in the last 10 years that we've had a jail facility, big or small, that has not included it, but it does become a budget item. If budget is a concern, what you can do is bid it out as an alternate bid, or for example, water management system is a base bid, and then without the water management system as an alternate bid. And that's pretty easy for us to do from a design standpoint. But I've had some owners say, no, we want water management system regardless because the energy savings. But there is a price tag with it.
You got an opinion on that, Joey?
Not necessarily. And I get it depends on the cost.
I guess there's no current consensus on that, Josh.
It'd be nice to have the option.
Yes, it would be nice to have the option.
Yeah, I think that if nothing else, we can set it up to do an all bid based bid. We've done this numerous times in the past. It's been a while, but it's pretty simple from our standpoint.
Josh, we currently have water management systems as a potential alternate on the list for Carrie.
We'll go that approach with as little effort as it really is on our end to spec that out. Okay. Piping wise, we're planning on copper for 2-inch and smaller, and then 2.5 to 4-inch. 4-inch I think is going to be the top end where you're at on this building. We usually allow the contractor an option between copper and galvanized steel. Just allows them some flexibility depending on what the market is out there for costs. The other big item really want to discuss is the sanitary piping type. I generally recommend using cast iron pipe to serve security fixtures. And the reason being, as we discussed earlier, when you have to roto-root that pipe and items get stuck in it, in particular if it's buried underground and not accessible from a basement, your cast iron is going to last better than PVC. You just run the risk of damaging the PVC as your roto-rooter right now. However, I defer and let any owner provide their input on if they're concerned or seeing issues with that or not. Some have, some haven't, but I would generally recommend cast iron to serve your security fixtures. That's your sanitary, your waste pipe.
That makes perfectly good sense to me.
Okay. Well, we will proceed with that. If costs continue, if costs are an issue, then we can certainly revisit that at a later point. Luckily, this isn't a huge facility, so it shouldn't be a big cost difference.
Josh, does it make sense for non-correctional plumbing devices, those be maybe PVC or?
Yeah, and we can certainly do that. You have far fewer of them obviously on this building, but I would recommend right here where you have the staff toilet and the public toilet, we could go ahead and do PVC for that. I'm not generally as concerned about having a rotor root that as much. So we'll proceed along those lines of PVC for staff, public restrooms, and cast iron on the housing area. And then, does the county have any preferences in the staff area on manually operated fixtures versus sensor operated?
I do. Like in the whole facility, in the one I'm in now, they put the automated ones for the motion. I've had to replace every one of them after just a few years, and I went to the manual because it was like $400 to get, that's just to buy the fixture to put it in, versus $80 for us to put in the manually operated ones. They break, they're not worth the money, and in the long run, you're gonna have to replace them after just a few years.
Okay, well, sounds like we'll go ahead and go with manual fixtures then for these couple staff/public restrooms. And yeah, I would agree. To me, even honestly, if a owner were to tell me they want automatic fixtures, I would always do hardware as well, opposed to battery. But it seems like you've had some issues on the automatic side, so we'll just go with manual. Okay. Let's see, so I believe the last item I have is just from a fire protection standpoint. Not too much to review here. Plenty of water pressure. We don't need a fire pump, which is fantastic because that adds a whole lot of money for a lot of different reasons. Our plan will be just standard fixture, our sprinkler heads in the office area, and then in the inmate occupied area, they will be institutional tamper resistant type sprinkler heads. There's basically it'd be by Tyco or Viking are the two good brands that we'll have in the spec, and that's pretty standard of any jail facility. The one little different item we will do is in this electrical IT room, we will put high temperature sprinkler heads, something where it just takes a little bit more to melt the fusible link in case it gets a little warm in that area. Hopefully it won't with our HVAC unit, but that is an approach we've done as well. The other option would be is if the county feels pretty strongly about it, we could go with some type of dry chemical or pre-action system, but honestly those things are about $20,000. They're not cheap. I think for a lot of these rooms, you go high temperature heads, you're generally okay. That's pretty much it on my end. Trying to keep it a fairly simplistic system and something that's works from a cost standpoint to keep everything within budget, but still provide that necessary zoning, in particular on the HVAC side. As discussed on the plumbing side, we will absolutely be taking the maintenance service side into account as we lay everything out.
Are there any doors or walls in the facility that are not fire rated?
I will defer to our architectural side on that. I don't believe we have any 2-hour ratings, but Bill or Scott, I don't know if you could answer that.
Yes, there are some walls in the facility that are not fire rated. We have a drawing we can show here in a minute that identifies what walls are required to be fire rated.
But mostly in the public access area?
The corridors primarily, the padded holding area, mechanical room.
Your walls.
Yeah, and then the exterior wall because of the proximity to adjacent structures.
From the top left and bottom,
Right.
not on the alley.
Yeah, top left and bottom. Do any other questions, mechanical, plumbing, fire protection related?
If you think of anything after the meeting, just shoot an email over to Scott and Bill, and we'd be happy to address it or discuss anything further as needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next up is Robert Willie to discuss electrical and IT.
All right, as Scott said, my name is Robert Willie, I'm doing electrical design here, and just wanted to point out a few things about the electrical system. Everything will be coming from this room up here, distributed out. The only difference between a standard panel and electrical, the panels we're going to be putting in here is going to have electrically operated breakers to control the lights through the security system. So other than that, everything will be pretty much standard. It'll be all three-phase. As far as devices go, as far as power-wise, literally it's going across, I think this line right through here. Pretty much everything north of that, except for the control room, will be detention grade. We'll have the big heavy detention cover on it versus everything down here being standard. Lighting-wise, it'll be follow the same aspect. We will keep standard lights throughout these areas here. It will have like basket style droppers in the office area and then straight LED flat panels in all the other areas. And as we get up through everything else up here will be detention grate, recessed fixtures with heavy, it would be 2.5 inch inner, 0.5 inch outer lanes fixtures. Be a little bit tougher to get into. Lighting control, I hit that up with the panels earlier. Everything in the day rooms, associated bathrooms, all the way down will be controlled with discrete electronics. All common spaces, corridors, and everything else south will be manual, or not manual, but automatic control locally, either through an aux sensor or some kind of toggle switch within the area itself. I will provide a light and a receptacle in the chases, common chases, like this chase right here. I will coordinate the locations with the access panels so that way they're readily accessible, which will help the convenience. That's, oh, I did miss one thing on, one question I had on devices. Do we need any additional receptacles in day rooms besides like the standard TV? Do you need anything for like microwave or anything that you may be putting in there to allow them to use?
In the work
CPAP machine?
work release portion, I will. There's a vending area that will have vending machines in it. So
Yeah,
I need
I will have
receptacles.
those here.
I have
Speaking of,
microwave, and I needed some outlets because they will have to charge their GPS bracelets.
okay, do you want those by the bunks?
That would be fine.
Okay.
Right.
I can easily add those across all these bunks down here. I'll have a receptacle set up for each one of them. I'll have one upper and lower for each bunk. That way each occupant or each participant can plug in their own charging bracelet.
So do they set those on the floor? Do they set them on their bunk? Do they set them on a shelf? What's the preference when they're charging?
There's nothing to set. It's just a cord, just like for your phone. It just plugs into the bracelet itself, and it charges it.
So are these bracelets still on me
Yep.
for this one?
Yes.
Okay.
It stays on them all the time.
Okay. Okay, so I will set those up so they're near the bunks within an inch or so. That way that's more readily accessible to them while they're sleeping, napping, whatever.
So start changing the goals up.
Yeah.
Ideally, it'd be good for us too, but, I mean, we'd have a need for it, but we have them covered now because they mess with them so much, so I don't know that I wouldn't feel comfortable with it.
Would,
I mean,
would
they
you
use
need any additional outlets back up in the other day rooms?
I don't think so. I mean, there's a need for it, but presently they mess with them so much, we've got them covered up, so, but like putting clippers in to cut their hair, or there was a kind of a push a few years ago to get iPads for them for treatment and things like that, but I don't know. There's some way to put them in where we could, I mean, cover them again if we thought we could use them, I guess, but I don't think we'd be for long.
I can't provide them in a custom box, a lockable box, that way you can go in and unlock it as you need them. Or on the alternative is putting electrically controlled breakers in there, so basically we can control the power to those devices, so they're dead.
That would be good, yeah.
The lock boxes would be great.
Yeah, I would probably rather do the lockbox so we could take away human error on our end if somebody didn't shut the outlet off or whatever.
So would you just like to see like an additional device in each day room, or are we thinking more?
Probably, yeah, just one. I would think one would be good with a box to secure it.
That way you don't want to go with the power.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So as far as, is there any other questions on kind of wiring, power devices, and lighting before I switch over to IT fire alarms?
Did you
I
say at
kind of went through a
the
little quick, so.
Did you say at the beginning something was ran on three-phase?
Yeah, three-phase power, yes.
What was that?
Well, just the building will be three-phase.
Is there three-phase coming to that building?
Yes, there's three-phase there now.
Okay.
So does that mean all of our HVAC equipment would be three-phase?
Yeah, the intent would be that all your large equipment and things like that will be all three-phase, where everything else will be all single-phase. And it would be, well, but,
Yeah, generally I would anticipate the rooftop units, because they've got the compressors for cooling in them, those will likely be three-phase. The ductless split, certain IT room may end up being single-phase. Boiler single-phase. The pumps are likely going to be less than a horsepower, so those will be single-phase. So it's really looking at your primary cooling equipment will probably need to be three-phase.
yeah, the bigger energy users will be the three-phase, distributed across the three phases and produce less energy.
Okay.
Okay, so kind of moving on to the fire alarm and IT, I will be providing a new fire alarm system throughout with a head in here. We'll have an NCA panel set up in the control room and at the main entrance lobby down here. The devices will follow the same as, I should say, the power devices, the receptacles, and lighting. Everything basically north of here will all be detention covers on it. Will be hard plastic or hard metal, and that includes smoke detectors. We'll call for a wire guard and all that, so it'll be a little bit less prone to somebody getting in tampering with them. IT-wise, we'll have a new IT rack back here distributed out. It's not far enough. So we'll have new devices like that. We'll have some devices for offices, control rooms, and then there'll be video visitations. I see little boxes in here, so we'll provide the communications for those. TVs.
Just for clarification, the video visitation, that'll be part of the inmate telephone service provider contract typically. I don't know who you currently use for your inmate telephones. So anyway, just to point that out. And typically, your inmate telephone service provider, who also provides video visitation, will provide their own equipment.
Correct.
which will also be stored back here, along with our security electronics room will all be back here as well. So everything will be all back here in this room combined. As far as telephones,
So can you clarify or confirm who your current inmate telephone service provider is?
It's IC Solutions.
Okay. And do they also hold a contract for video visitation?
Yes.
We use SIGNet.
can you repeat that, please?
Corrections, we use SIGNet.
Okay. So I assume that the same provider would be implemented over here, very likely?
Yes.
Yes, can you provide us a contact name of that? I'd like to reach out to make sure that I have everything covered for the video visitation and everything.
Pardon?
Can you provide me a contact for each of those companies?
Yes.
Yeah. We can use the same one that the jail's using, I mean, that's fine. I just put mine in about 3 months ago. So,
Okay. Now, I've found that each one of those companies usually has a different requirement for all the video visitations and everything, and I just want to make sure I have everything in line.
go with whatever.
Now, for cable TV, do you use, for TV, do you use cable TV, satellite TV, or do you network-based?
Cable for the jail.
Cable.
Because we'll set up each one of these TVs, we will provide them with telex and the communications or AJAX, so that way in the future, if you ever want to go internet-based, internet network-based, you'll have that capability. I think that's just about everything you need. I do have a question as far as emergency power. This building does not have a generator. Do we need to bring power, or is there power available from the jail to bring over here if needed?
That's probably a question for Bill. I don't know how that would work. It's probably a question for our maintenance guy. He's not here right now, so.
And
Okay.
I don't know if it's possible, but I have been looking for, our building has no generator. So when it's down, we're down on everything, phones, everything, nothing works. I could, maybe if they get bids and stuff, look at a generator that would run both the new facility and ours. And
Well, we could easily set this one up with the capability to reach across over into the jail for any future generator like that, so that we have the capability in the future.
Either one of you two got any more suggestions on that?
Not really.
Well, that's certainly something to consider. I would think that at the very least we would have all the necessary points of connection and any other hardware that might be needed, where a unit could be, a generating unit could be set into place and easily hooked up, put into service. But Michelle, you make a good point about having, you don't have a generator over there.
and we need one.
Yeah,
I've got the funds to pay for it, I would just have to go in front of the board, so if they get bids and stuff. That way both buildings would.
Okay. Well, if you get going down that road and you'd like to include any loads off this building, I could provide you with the loads necessary to back up this building. You can usually take that, whoever you get to do that can take into account that when you're sizing the generator for you.
How large are services going to be in this building?
Right now, I'm looking at about 400 amps.
Okay, not bad.
Yeah, the only other piece that I didn't mention earlier was that I'm going to provide all the emergency lighting right now to handle the emergency drivers, ballast inside, battery packs inside each light. So it'll be a little bit more maintenance consuming, time consuming to go around and check all those and make sure they're up to date. But without a generator, that's about the only other thing we can do is provide a central unit where we have all the batteries in one location, but it takes up the most work. Okay, with that, I think that's, unless there's any questions, I don't think there's anything else I can go over. I was just reminded of one more question before we hand it off. Do you have any kiosks anywhere that need to be taken into account? Like a lobby or?
We have one for Keith, that I would assume we would need to put another kiosk over there, so they'll provide that.
It sounded like you said that there would be one for Keith, is that
Yeah, I'm sorry.
here, this lobby, or will it?
I guess they could still come to the jail, but that's who we use. We have a kiosk for Keith in our main jail. I mean, I guess family could still come in there. I don't know if Keith would want to put one over there or not.
Okay. Michelle, any need for any kind of kiosk for work release?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I still need to look at the car. All right, so
Thank you.
that concludes mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, IT. And we're going to transition now and talk about door hardware, security electronics. Door hardware being both builder's hardware and detention hardware. We have Nick, Kelly, Mickey online to see those items. So Nick, does it make sense for maybe you to kind of lead the detention hardware? Because it's so integral, obviously, with Mickey, and then I know that builder's hardware is also integral with security electronics as well.
The detention hardware is really fairly simple on this job. Based on the hardware, the new drawings you sent me the other day and the door schedule, I basically have 8-inch jam locks on all the detention doors that are being controlled and monitored. And they're either on one side or both sides. The cells would be key one sides, and everything else, the day room doors going from corridor to corridor will be keyed both sides. We do have food passes on the cell doors in the small day room, and then all the doors into the dorm areas. How you control them as far as intercoms and stuff like that, that's going to be from the security consultant.
Right.
And,
Hey, Nick, real quick, I know that we've had a conversation kind of offline, and we've also had a conversation with Poly Jail, who's the, for those of you that don't know, the detention equipment contractor here in Indianapolis. We consult with them very frequently. But regarding the existing detention door manufacturer, the hardware,
yes,
what do they currently have? Is it Folger Adams?
I believe your current system is all Folger Adams.
So with that,
And I actually, based on the first information, set of information you sent to me, I sent I converted all of our typical hardware sets that we use our Brink products for, and sent that down to Folger, or Southern Folger, the budget price of that material.
yeah,
And that came back with the price tag that is almost 3 times more than what our Brink products would cost.
so, Nick, very good segue, thank you. So, in my conversation with Jared Bailey last week, we were talking about this, and if we attempt to match the current detention lock manufacturer, being Folger Adams, so steel out, there's going to be a premium, absolute premium, to Coastal Detention, who holds Folger Adams Southern Steel. Our recommendation is to open it up so that we include other manufacturers for competitive bidding purposes. We understand that, this is a separate building, it's not part of, the main jail proper. We believe that the cost benefit of opening it up outweighs, having one lock manufacturer. We wouldn't anticipate you carrying keys back and forth between the two buildings. Wouldn't anticipate you necessarily carrying keys in this building. Everything's remotely controlled. So, just want to get your input on that.
I don't have any problem with taking bids. We're not Folger Adams.
All of the locks in the current jail need to be replaced anyway because we've had one down for about 9 months now. So they claim they can't find.
That's not our limit.
So, Nick, certainly I would recommend that we include our Brink as a manufacturer. Southern Steel, any others that you would recommend? AirTech or?
We rarely ever use AirTech products. We don't have a real good relationship with them because they're owned by one of our competitors.
Sure.
We've had very good success with our Brink products, and we tend to stay with that as much as possible. If we have to go with Southern Steel or Folger Adams because the owner wants to match an existing key system, we will. But we will also tell you that it's going to cost more.
Yeah. So, Nick, any
And
reason?
Folger Adams is the most expensive.
Yeah. So, any reason not to just open it up to, say, 2 or 3 manufacturers?
Open it up. It's
Yeah.
not gonna be any different to have
Or-
2 sets of keys,
competitive.
set of keys, set of keys.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I think we should have borrow Brink as a base bid, and if you want to do a separate pricing for Southern Folger to see where they're at, put it in as an alternate.
Okay.
Or Southern Steel, Southern Steel's fairly competitive, but they're still not as competitive as our Brink. And Southern and Folger come out of the same factory, so they're basically the same products, but you have to pay a premium for the Folger items.
Got it. Fayette County, are you guys opposed to this discussion, opening it up to 2 or 3 of the major manufacturers?
Michelle and I are. I guess you guys make that decision.
I'm sorry, did you say you are or
We
are not?
aren't opposed to it.
Okay.
Personally, I think competition in that field is good.
Agreed.
How many locks are we actually talking about?
We are talking about 21 electric locks and some deadbolts and 8 food pass locks. So there's not a lot of locks.
Okay.
Yeah.
If this is a separate building by itself, it'd be a very simple way, we could key it very easily into a new Brink system and It'd be completely controlled over there, and you wouldn't have to be moving keys back and forth between the buildings.
And that's just the detention side. There's not a whole lot on the commercial side as well.
So unless there's any other questions, Nick, do you have anything else, or does anybody have any questions regarding detention door hardware? That may be a good segue over to builders hardware.
I just wanted to make sure with Nick, is there going to be a detention specification where all that hardware is going to be included in that spec section?
Yes, there will.
Okay, great.
That'd be DLZ's standard detention hardware specification. We've done work before where it's not assigned hardware sets.
Right.
Yeah, I have one recently where I was asked to keep it in the hardware spec, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions from the owner regarding detention door hardware before we move on to builder's hardware?
Joey, you or Michelle have anything else on that?
I don't.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Okay. Legion, want to review the builder's hardware concept?
You want to sign off?
All right. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, Kelly, you were at the preliminary meeting, so I'm not exactly sure what was discussed up front, but I'm not sure if manufacturers or anything, but coming off the detention hardware, it sounds as if we're in the same game here where you're going to want multiple manufacturers listed for open competition. Is that correct?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, what do you two think?
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, we certainly want to invite the competition on every occasion.
Okay. And as far as, is there a clean line of division of where detention doors are versus non-detention doors? Are they more, you know, if it's, I see there's some wood doors and whatnot. So as far as the hardware is concerned on these doors, we don't need to be like that heavy duty, like, right? I mean, there's no concern of, I do see some work release, so I'm not sure if there's concern with inmates or halftime people maybe, where you still need some really, really heavy duty builder's hardware.
So we're either going to have the detention hardware that Kim Reed just reviewed. You know, everywhere you see an 8-inch jam lock, that's a detention door hardware.
Right.
Everywhere else that you see 2-inch jams, standard commercial hardware is acceptable for those locations.
Okay. So, I mean, are we looking at like mortise lock sets? We're looking at cylindrical lock sets? I mean, how far do we want to take? There's so many different levels and grades of builder's hardware, so I'm just curious how far you want to take it.
I don't know if the owner has a preference.
We haven't even discussed matters of that detail, but I'm quite sure we don't want the equivalent of camper trailer hardware on the doors and things like that, you know. We want something that's going to last for a lot of years.
Sure. I mean, yeah, we will be looking at specifying obviously a grade 1 and open specification though. It's just a matter of lock sets. You got the mortise kind, how much, you know, where your mortise on the edge of the door versus cylindrical where it's just bored through the face of the door.
I'd like to, whatever you go with, the problem I ran into in my building is the brand of door lock that's on it now. They're out in the whole building. I can't get keys. I have to contact somebody out of state to get the keys, and like a master key, one key so that my staff can go in and out is $11 plus the shipping and all that. I would like to see, I don't care who you go with, but if we need to make keys, we can take them someplace and get them made. But no one's allowed to carry this brand that they put in the current building. So you have to go to one of them. There used to be one in Indiana, and they for whatever reason, they're not doing that brand, so I had to find one out of state. And I just give them the number off of my key and they'll make, I think $11 a key's a bit much.
So Michelle, who is the current Builders Hardware
Best.
key? Best?
Yeah,
Okay. Would you like to stay with Best?
absolutely not.
Okay.
You can't make the keys. I have to send out a state to get keys.
So the question I have about the keying, it's a different topic than the locks. So the keying, it sounds as if you might have a high security key system, and or the next level down from high security is a restricted keyway. And in both of those situations, they try to keep people from unauthorized duplication of keys. So they try to lock it down for the. I don't know what you've all gone through, but there will be some red tape involved, because of that. But what we always recommend is that an extra box of blanks are kept locked up in your key box, so that if you do need to get another key made for yourself, you'll have it on hand. You just take a blank yourself and go get it cut.
So Michelle, just to kind of summarize what we just said is, he is correct that it's essentially two different issues. One is obviously that the lock manufacturer Best quality product. But the issue that you're describing really has to do with the key security assignment. That we can sort that out, after the fact, when we go through, our key meetings, depending on what level of security, because the level of security will dictate, for example, the exact example that you decided that you have to send keys out of state. We could drop that down, or like was just suggested, keep the links there and your office locked up.
Yeah, and the price of the keys that you're talking about kind of clues me into that you probably have a high security system. Those keys are expensive. They have like the side bar on them. There's pins in the cylinder that come in from the side as well as from the top, and that's to help. It's to prevent somebody from being able to pick the lock. So I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for this building. Or the next step down, like I said, is a restricted keyway. It doesn't have the extra set of pins coming from the side, but it's a keyway that's just not where you can't just find them hanging on the back shelf at a locksmith or at the mall. They're locked down, and you need to get a letter of authorization in order to buy more. But up front in the project, like I said, we always recommend you get an extra box or two of blanks, and you keep them on hand, and then you're ready to go and quickly get an extra one instead of always having to order one at a time and wait for it and pay extra for it.
So Michelle, if you want to keep that same level of security for the builder's hardware, we will do that, and I would strongly suggest that we order some blanks. Or if you feel like that maybe that's overkill and we don't need that level of security, we can drop it down to restricted. Just so you don't have the kind of headache that you mentioned that you've had. But we can sort that out. We don't have to decide that today, I guess.
Yeah, as far as the level, if it's high security or restricted, that is something that would be specified though and bid out.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess what I would need to know before I write this back. Yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't want Michelle to feel like she was put on the spot and had to make a decision in the next 5 minutes.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, you'll let me know, I guess.
Okay. So what else, Builders Hardware?
I still would recommend. I know that you said Best. Best is all interchangeable core. Other manufacturers have interchangeable core. I still recommend that you stick with interchangeable core. So unless you are adamantly against it for some reason, but is that fine to stick if I specify an interchangeable core? That's that figure 8 shape core, so you can pull them out and change them out from the front without having to take them out.
That I would recommend that, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah, and then back to the original lock question that I had was, I don't know if anybody, or if that's something you guys want to think about, get back to me as well, as far as that's something I'll need to know, if we want mortise or cylindrical. Lock sets.
Cylindrical is more cost effective.
They are, yep.
They can't do any vest. They can't get.
We're not talking about long doors, you're pretty much looking at the doors right there on the screen.
Right, right. I would say that mortise is a little more heavier duty and can withstand abuse a little more. But if we're talking, like, that's what I was asking about the detention versus builder's hardware. It looks like as if we're kind of a front of house admin area versus back of house detention area. Correct me if I'm wrong, just looking at this. You could probably get away with more cylindrical if it's more of an office setting. If not, then I push it towards mortise.
Yeah, I would think cylindrical would be sufficient for this application.
Yep, okay. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, and I think at one point it was talked that there was going to be a plan, like a technology plan or a plan maybe that might be marked up showing access control locations.
That's the next conversation. If you're ready to go there, that's where we'll go.
Okay, yeah, that's, I mean, other than that, is if we got the high level, what type of hardware I'm going with, then we get into the weeds with access control and whatnot, we can go there.
Good. Any other questions regarding builder's hardware before we move on to street electronics? All right. Mickey Whiting with Stanley Current Security Solutions, they have the current security, they're the current security system integrator for the existing jail. So, Mickey, would you like to walk through your concept of how we're addressing security electronics?
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Basically took the plan the DOZ sent me and placed cameras where I thought they would be needed. Did the same thing with card readers and intercom stations at the control doors, and also showed all of the doors that I will control from the touchscreen control system, marked with the kind of a bullseye icon there, as well as overhead paging speakers. Kind of placed overhead paging speakers where I thought they might be needed in areas. And you can see the camera icons there on the screen for the cameras exterior on the corners. And I placed cameras throughout the building where I thought they would be needed. You can see the cameras in the hallways, some of the cameras in the smaller rooms, as well as the fisheye icon in the day rooms, is the large circle with the 4 triangles around it. I put a fisheye in those rooms. Fisheyes will most likely cover that entire area. Some of our customers do not like fisheyes. They would rather have mini dome cameras, multiple mini dome cameras in rooms. But that would be an owner decision.
Mickey, how many cameras does the system you're looking at comprise of?
I did not count them when I was placing them. I can get a quick count here, I guess. Approximately 23 to 25 in this building.
Okay, and that would be interior and exterior both?
Correct.
Okay, can you tell us what the video backup capacity is?
I believe I did a 30 days recording. Actually, no, I'm sorry. 180 days. I base it on 180 days, 6 months of recording.
Okay,
Space.
180 days, that's a lot.
Yeah, I would say that's becoming the standard around the state. We do still see 60, 90 days storage as well. Again, that's owner dependent, whatever you would like to see.
Is there a requirement on that aspect yet?
I don't believe so. It depends on who you talk to. If you talk to an attorney, they will tell you you have to have minimum 1 year of storage. But I would say maybe 10% of our customers have 1 year's worth of storage.
The correctional authorities in Indiana hasn't mandated a particular period yet, is that correct?
Not from what I have seen, no.
Okay. Give them time.
Yeah, exactly.
Only thing I'm not crazy about, I don't really like the fisheye dome cameras as much, but that's just a preference. They have them at the schools. We deal with them some. I don't like the views on them, but it's just my preference. It's not a big deal.
I didn't quite catch that. You do not like the fisheye?
I do not. But it's not a big deal. Just preference.
Yeah, it's just preference. I could take out the fisheyes in those rooms and put a mini dome camera in each one of the corners. I would say 2 cameras in each one of those day rooms would be sufficient. So you're looking at really no cost difference. The fisheyes are more expensive than the mini dome, so if you put 2 mini domes in each one of those day rooms, cost is negligible.
Do you guys have any opposition to doing it that way since it's the same cost? With the 2 cameras?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I was asking the commissioners.
Speak up, Joey.
Oh, sorry.
You guys got preference on fisheye over? Yeah, the main thing is, does the camera deliver a good image?
Right.
Is my only concern.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these cameras will be megapixel, at least 2 megapixels, some of them up to 6 megapixel, which is 10 times better than the cameras you have in the existing jail.
So Mickey, how long does it take you to get your type of equipment to the job site once it's ordered?
We're running into some delays, obviously, as everyone else is. It depends on the equipment. We're having trouble right now getting computers. We are having trouble getting certain types of cameras. Multi-imager cameras are an issue, which you have 4 there on the exterior. We're being told sometimes 4 to 5 months after we order a camera, it'll show up at our shop.
So even at 4 or 5 months, that's not going to delay the project. We just need to order the stuff early.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, is there anything else you want to review, Mickey? Any questions or answers?
I also have some guard tour in there, mainly in the day rooms. I don't know if you want a guard tour system for an officer to do their checks. They would just go around and push a button. These buttons have to be pushed in order. I'm sure the jail has a guard tour system, and that's optional. If it's not needed, you can take it out.
I like the idea of that.
I do have cameras inside of the cells in the 1 day room at the top right. Wasn't sure if you wanted any cameras inside of cells, but I do currently have those 4 cameras there inside of those 4 cells.
allowed to have them in there?
I don't think
I don't think so.
Because you've got toilet facility in there.
Are you allowed to have those in the cell?
Yeah, you can have cameras inside cells.
So we would typically see cameras in holding cells, meaning like intake booking area, a temporary holding cell, but not in a cell like I think this is intended to be used. I mean, this is more of a housing type cell.
Yeah. Okay, I can remove those.
What else do you have, Mickey?
We talked briefly about the paging speakers, the overhead paging speakers, if you wanted to be able to page into those areas. I'm only assuming that you would want some type of a paging system.
Is that what the S is for?
Yes.
Something we discussed in one of our meetings, and I'm not sure, and I see there's a duress button down here in the professional visitation. I guess it'd be a question to Michelle. Is there anywhere else you want them to be?
Yeah, right now I have duress buttons in that conference room there at the bottom. It was mentioned to have one directly outside of the conference room because you may be transporting inmates into that conference room possibly. So something could happen in that hallway. I also have a duress button in the control room, in the visitation room.
Yeah, it looks like one of the work release toilet or testing.
Yes.
That's what we do, I want in the office. You see somebody walking in, going, I don't like this situation.
Yeah, they've got one there.
Oh, he said,
Yeah, I think where you have them, Mickey, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Can we go back and address Mickey's question regarding speaker page, ceiling mounted? And I guess I'm kind of looking for somebody from the sheriff's office to comment on paging speakers, required, desired, don't what?
I think it's a good idea. Well, it's good. We'll take all the bills and this. If radio's good. Yeah.
There's so many
Okay.
laying back there. They gotta be able to-
Mickey, what else do you have?
Proximity readers, I believe I only have 3 so far. One getting into the front vestibule there. One going into the admin area to the right. And then one at the back of the facility coming in. In the vestibule interlock.
Yeah. So just to be clear, when Mickey says proximity reader, like a card access system, whether it be a fob or whatever.
And it would be on the same key fob system that the jail is on.
Sounds good.
So, Mickey, so obviously the readers are going to be, there's a Division 28 spec, right? So that's going to be in Division 28?
Yes.
And then wherever I see your DPS or door precision switch, is that also Division 28, or do you want me to pick that up in Division 8?
The DPS itself,
Yes.
that would be you.
Okay. And then what about power supplies, or you going to have that all taken care of as well? or do you want me to take care of that?
Power supply is for what?
So for any of the builder's hardware doors that have procs, I think there's only two, the front two by the admin and the vestibule door. Do you want power supply in the hardware set by the hardware supplier? Right at the opening, or are you going to have that consolidated going back to a closet?
I will supply the power for the proximity readers from my racks.
Okay.
Okay, Mickey, what else do you have on price?
The only thing we did not talk about are the intercom stations. I kind of put intercom stations on control doors.
Yeah.
Most of the time, both in and out.
Right. So typically speaking, what Mickey was saying was either we have a detention door that's both controlled and monitored. We have an intercom on each side so that there's communication back to master control when they're top of the doors.
That's what you have at jail now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why we have to jail now, yeah, that'd be.
Yeah, that's typical. Yeah.
I guess the only other thing we didn't talk about is the actual control station itself and any client stations that want to view cameras. Right now, I'm assuming there's going to be one control station there in control 1012, controlling the doors, answering the intercoms. There will also be a couple client viewing monitors there looking at cameras. Is there anywhere else in that building that needs to either control doors or view cameras?
No.
So Mickey, that may be a good segue then. I believe you also wanted to touch base on the fact that you provided a proposal to Fayette County a couple of years ago to upgrade the existing security electronics at the existing jail. And I think you want to touch base on that briefly. And I talked about it on February the 15th and just made sure that people understood that that's a separate proposal outside of ELT scope. And so I think, Mickey, you updated that. But I say that as a segue because asking if there's any communication between the existing master control of the existing jail and this master control.
In order for the existing jail system to have any type of control over the annex building or vice versa, the existing system at the jail needs to be upgraded. The equipment in the jail is outdated, is no longer manufactured. Some of the equipment, not all of it. So it needs to be updated in order to communicate to the annex system. Now that is the proposal I gave back in 2019 to Zach Jones, and I've updated that in the past couple weeks.
So how would you control the exterior doors when someone's walking from one building to the other and watching them?
The exterior doors can either be controlled by the jail control center, or that they can be controlled from the annex control center.
I understand. I'm talking about cameras, just watching people walk around from one building to the other and just the movement. I mean, I think that you'd have to call one building and have to call the other and say, hey, we're getting ready to transport an inmate from building A to building B, and then they're both looking at the cameras just to see that. There's just a, I don't want to say a break between those two, but there's a little bit of a gray area.
We can provide IP master telephone stations in the control rooms, and you would simply call the other controller and letting them know someone's coming over.
So, Mickey, if somebody was escorting a female from this facility over, and they went out the back door, you've got cameras there on that back alley that you can see all the way over to the existing jail. So it'd be viewed and monitored from this master control in the annex, and then when they went over and hit the intercom to walk into the existing jail with the automatic camera call up, then that's when the existing jail will take over monitoring. Am I thinking correctly?
You would be able to view both sets of cameras from both buildings if you wanted to.
Right.
If you wanted the jail to view the exterior camera that's on the side of the annex, you could do that. But yeah, once they got over to the jail, they would hit the intercom station and it would alert central control that someone's at the door.
Right.
The jailers.
So to that point, I think we're covered. I guess is what I'm saying.
We should be. I'm not sure physically of the line of sight from this building to the jail. I don't know if there's anything in between, or if you can see the jail from this building. I don't know.
Yes, it's right across the alley.
Okay.
Michelle, were you going to say something?
The jailers all have radios to radio control to, pop door 104 or whatever the door number is. So they'll
Right.
have radios.
Okay.
And I think our premise on this, that there would only be one controller on duty at a time, correct?
Yes, that was,
The premise of the council approving funding to man this facility was on the premise that this facility would be controlled most of the time, I'd have to say, probably not 100%, but would be controlled from the jail.
Yep.
That was to eliminate 5 possibly needed employees to man the control room 24/7 at this facility.
Right,
And that was the premise on us approving the initial outlay of funds and paying for these employees out of the current jail tax. And also the other idea was if something goes awry at the jail, this facility is a backup to control the electrical locks at the jail with some kind of interlock to be able to lock out those who have occupied the jail from being able to do it themselves.
And we can absolutely set it up that way to have the control station in the annex be kind of a backup to the jail. And if something were to happen in the jail, if the inmates were to take over, the station in the annex could be set up to disable all of the control stations in the jail.
Okay.
Which would move your name onto different systems.
I assume most of that is probably software programming.
Correct, yep.
So Mickey, with that explanation regarding staffing, then that separate proposal to upgrade the existing security electronics at the existing jail, that has to occur.
Correct,
Not to happen.
correct.
So Vicki, but Scott, just one thing, or you have 2 systems setting in the jail, the existing jail. One for the existing jail, one that is for the annex. Is that the other alternative?
Yes, one alternative would be to supply one additional control computer and set it in the jail control room and have it setting off to the side, and it be the only control station in the jail that would be able to control the annex.
So
So they took the jail over, they've taken both buildings.
Yeah, you would have no way of shutting off the existing control stations in the jail if something were to happen. The annex could not do that.
I don't like that.
It all comes down to money.
Right. Yeah, and Mickey, I know we've had offline discussions with you before and regarding the budget for the project, and I believe you supplied a proposal 2019, I think you said was like 150,000. I think you updated it to approximately 200,000 now.
It's approximately 181,000.
Okay. So, anyway, we're all watching the budget very closely.
And if you wanted to pull that quote up now, we could browse through it, or if I can just send it to the sheriff and the commissioners and they can look at it offline.
That would be fine, Mickey. But now the dual control system that will work either direction, then that's going to be at least a $181,000 upgrade that is outside the scope of the Dollar General building entirely.
That is correct. And that would be a direct proposal to Stanley to serve the current street system integrator at 2015.
The ARPA funds, do they cover that deal?
That I don't know, Michelle.
I could cover it with my board's approval.
Yeah.
I think there's, and I can't speak for the council, but I think by the time monies are required to do this, which is probably a year off, safely saying, I think there'd be ample money still in the jail tax to cover all or part of it. If Michelle has any trouble, based on that spreadsheet I did. We just have to make plans for it.
Well, I think everyone would agree that this upgrade is an essential part of the project.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you have to be able to turn off the other facility from either position.
Right.
With that being said, if this annex project were to not happen, in my opinion, the system of the jail needs upgraded
Yes.
regardless. It was installed in 2007, so it's 14, 15 years old. And some of the equipment, if it were to die, we would not be able to replace it. We just can't get the parts for that outdated equipment anymore.
Okay. Any other questions regarding security electronics?
No.
All right. Nikki, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So next on the agenda, we just wanted to kind of briefly walk everyone through the architectural floor plan. Bill Stark's going to do that. Bill, I'm going to ask you to also to make sure that we stop and kind of pause on any of the more recent changes, tweaks that we've made. Also to make you all aware, last Wednesday, we met with Jeff Rowe, DOC State Jail Inspector. We walked him through this plan. He made a few comments, questions, and suggestions that we'll respond to. We'll make you aware as we go through the floor plan layout. So just want to make you aware that we have met with Jeff Rowe. He's fully aware of this. We spoke to him again earlier today about another question that popped up. So, Bill, can you maybe walk through, start kind of big picture?
Yes, so this is the current layout we have for the new annex and work release. On the down the lower right hand corner, we have the entryway with the administration area. So we have the new entryway, the administration area with the staff office, break room, toilet. The mechanical area will also be over in this corner. So on the work release side, we have the work testing toilet. We have the locker room. We have updated the floor plan for the women's work release sleeping area.
So real quick, if I could just interject, while we're looking at the work release area, a couple things I want to point out. You can see we've revised the sleeping dorm area. We've relocated the lockers kind of in that corridor between the day room and sleeping area. You can see some there on the kind of back wall. We also were able to incorporate an additional bunk, so we went from 18 to 20 in the work release area. The other thing I want to point out, Bill, can you just kind of highlight the interior walls that are white, that don't have any of the crosshatch pochette in those? Those walls, we are suggesting that those be metal stud and impact-resistant gypsum board. Because of the work release, we would not recommend that in a jail, but because it's a work release, that's our recommendation. Also more budget friendly.
All right.
Any comments there regarding the work release?
Is the washer or dryer still in the day room area?
The washer and dryer, we moved over to the toilet and bathroom, and the toilet and shower area. That is this item right here. Go ahead and highlight it.
So Michelle, that's a stacked washer dryer unit that backs up to the chase. Where all
But
the
it's
other police
actually-
fixtures back up to.
It's actually in the area they have access to all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there any way to move it to an area that, the problem is that they take their laundry in there to do it, and then they've got street clothes in there. And that's a problem I have now. It's in the dorm itself, and it creates a bunch of problems.
So you'd like for it to be in a room that you can control access to?
Yeah, even if it goes near that locker room, in the locker room where we can let them in there to do their laundry and then put it back in the lockers.
So you're saying actually in the locker room?
That would work. Or another, any room where I could just put them in to do their laundry.
Okay. Okay, we'll look into that. We also then have vending, which located right there. We have 2 vending machines. We have casework in the sink, area for microwave, counter.
To be clear on those vending machines, not to go old school on this, that is purely just snack machine, drink machine. There's no water or anything necessary for that. That is correct, right?
I need a drink machine, a snack machine, and a food machine. So there'll be 3 machines there.
Okay. So we need to add a 3rd vending.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Right, Bill, you want to kind of walk through the other areas of the floor plan?
Sure. So from the work release, we have we'll go here to kind of the central area. The control room, right off the lobby, has direct view to the lobby. We're going to put in, we decided to put in a kind of, not necessarily a letter pass and a packet pass. So the packet pass would be down here, the letter pass would be up at this counter.
Do you need a package pass and or paper pass?
Paper, that's
I don't, just a paper pass. Right now, like, we've got, that's what we have currently, and if they get packages in, we just have them set them in the lobby and we go get them and bring them in.
What keys? Okay. What about keys? Do you pass keys back and forth, or would somebody come into the control room into the key box?
We do a key box now.
Yeah, so if the key box was located in the control station there, if somebody immediately, you need to pass the key to somebody, do they just step into master control and retrieve the key, or do you need to be able to pass it
There's not gonna be somebody in
in the paper pass?
Won't be anybody in the control
there.
room.
Right.
Yeah.
There's not gonna be somebody in there all the time.
They'll be on
So,
the jail.
staff would have a radio to control at the jail to pop the door, and then they could go in and get a key if they needed it.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
So across in the control room, we have the professional visitation.
I'm just going to say, if you recall on February 15th during our staff design presentation, for design development presentation, county attorney, this was a comment that he had made, requesting a professional visitation. So this is where we located it. This is really what we believe to be the most ideal location, where a visiting attorney can come in through the front door, be led into the interlock, inmate escorted from the corridor into the interlock, and it's right across from master control. Understanding that whether it's staffed or not, but that's really the most ideal location, we believe.
On that room there, is there a way to provide privacy for the attorney and client and allow some sort of observation at the same time?
When you say privacy, meaning like not so much glass in that wall?
Well, obviously, we're not allowed to tape record attorney-client privileged conversations, but for the safety of the attorney, I guess, should there be some way to visually observe?
Yeah, so what we have, Dale, we have glass in that wall that faces master control, and there's glass in the wall for master control, so they can look across the corridor. But we would also put a camera. There's a camera in the professional visitation that will also be monitored, whether it be here at this control station or at master control at the existing jail.
Okay. All right, that answers.
And if you recall, we also have a duress button in there as well.
Scott, I currently do not have a camera in that room.
Oh, you don't? I think you had one in there. Okay.
I can put one in there.
Yeah.
So,
Just no audio.
No audio.
No audio.
Lawyer would stand there.
Well, it's good.
Okay. Next, the private professional visitation, we have a holding cell with a attached toilet room.
So this is, if you recall, there was a request or desire to have padded holding. And at one point, we had 2 padded holding, but the professional visitation just took the spot of one padded holding. We just ran out of real estate. So this is the holding cell that is intended to be padded holding. But what we are suggesting is we go ahead and outfit it, it'll settle up as a padded holding, but we take an alternate bid to actually to install the padding. Padding can be very expensive. What we're suggesting here is we're putting in a Norix Ironman steel bunk, floor mounted, and then the door between the holding cell and the toilet, so that door right there, either just not put the door in yet, just to take off the hinge, or we could put it in and put it on a hold back, so that that becomes another holding area. If and when, and it may be on bid day, we're able to, approve, the cost to provide padding for that area. That if not, then that's something that, an area that you can certainly retrofit later. You go ahead and settle up the flushable floor drain, just unbolt the bed, and hire a company to come in with padding. And again, it's only a cost preventative measure to protect the base bid. So on bid day, on the bid form, a contractor is going to submit a cost to provide padding in that room. And if bids are received favorably, on or under budget, such that that alternate can be accepted, then it would be at the commissioner's discretion. But we do that to protect the base bid. Like to have some safety valves in there. That makes sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move on. Here on the plan north, on the left side, we have the two dorm style jail areas. We have both of which hold 12 people. We have the detention fixtures here for them, both sides. On the right, we have the eight-person day room dorm style with the 8 holding cells to the north, or the 8 segregation style cells to the north. 4 segregation cells to the north, holding 8 people total.
So one thing we wanted to talk to you about, and I just gave the explanation on why we typically include alternate bids in certain conditions, and it's typically to protect the base bid. Sometimes we include alternate bids to keep other manufacturers honest when they're submitting a bid. But one thing that we've tossed around internally, and guys, I only mention this because, and I think I relayed this on our February 15th presentation when we presented to the commissioners. Budget, when we initially put this budget together, we weren't in the condition that we are today with the COVID supply chain issues. We're still trying to make sure that we can meet that budget. And then what's blowing up with Ukraine and oil prices, I mean, it's only going to make things worse, escalate. So we say that because we would suggest as another possible alternate that we take one of these housing units, whether it be one of the open dormitories on the left side of the screen or the 8-man holding cell concept on the right, and we just shell it. In other words, we don't necessarily build the wall, we don't outfit the furniture and equipment, but we stuff the utilities as part of the base bid. And if bids are received favorably, again, that's another alternate that the commissioners could award at their discretion. We just say that because if you ask me to predict what's going to happen with the whole world, Ukraine, Russia, oil prices and how that's going to affect material deliveries, I couldn't tell you. So I'm only suggesting that as kind of a safeguard, again, to help protect the base bid.
Why can't we go ahead and bid it? And then if we need to take it out later.
Sorry, say that again?
Why can't we go ahead and bid it with it in there, and then if we it doesn't make budget, then take it out.
Well, so if you were to do that, one of two things is going to happen. One, you're going to have to rebid it. Because it comes in over budget, can't negotiate on a public bid project. The bids are the bids. Or what's going to happen is if the county were to pursue that, you're very likely going to get not the full value of the true credit. In other words, plumbing contractor says, hey, there's 4 stainless steel combi units. It really cost me $40,000. I'm just making a number. But I'm only going to give you a $30,000 credit. I'm going to stick $10,000 in my pocket. So that's why we would suggest doing an alternate, an add alternate, so that we know the number to add to the base bid scope on bid day. If that makes sense.
We all understand what you're saying, but I think we feel like we just had a dose of castor oil, to tell you the truth. Everybody understands, I think, and frustrated with the worldwide supply chain problems. But if we wind up with pieces of this project missing, then that doesn't deliver the whole complement as we originally planned.
Yeah.
If there's any, when it comes to bidding, could it be bid, these two items in the floor plan be bid as optional with a price tag on them, or not?
Yes, and that's what I'm suggesting. We bid those as an alternate bid.
Okay.
So that on the bid form, on bid day, contractor would identify the cost to, build out day room X, whichever one we select. And then if bids are received favorably, then certainly, it provides the commissioners the flexibility to make sure that we remain on budget or don't work. And yep, that approach, because we're still bidding it, and we're still receiving the cost to implement it. Just we're going to identify these specific costs to implement it so we can break it out. Then if that approach is acceptable, I guess I'd like some input whether it would be a day room, an open dormitory, like one of the ones on the left, or perhaps the one at the bottom, or the holding cell in the upper right-hand corner. The upper right-hand corner provides the jail the greatest flexibility in being able to classify and segregate inmates, as opposed to an open dormitory.
They have to have cells that they can lock down. And like, it's your area, but you have to have those individual cells available.
Yeah. I would rather see more.
So we need to take the day room side then and make it a secondary bid.
Yeah. That's what I think. Yeah. We need it all. But that's, they gotta do an alternate.
All right. So one other thing we want to do, the dormitory, can you zoom out that area? Do you have a drawing? I do. Okay. So we're going to talk about this day room right here. And this was a suggestion or a comment by Jeff Grove, the DOC State Jail Inspector. So can you give another drawing? So he just asked the question, and let me preface this by, he was very clear, this is not a requirement. This is strictly an owner decision. He's just trying to be helpful and ask the question. He was asking where the females would receive programming and exercise. There's no space over here that would permit like an indoor, outdoor exercise area, just because of the physical constraints, and it's primarily the height. He said we can't comply. But nonetheless, this space could become program classroom, or we could subdivide it into 2 program classrooms. The trade-off, obviously, is you're giving up 8 beds. So he realized that, and he just wanted to throw that out just for discussion.
We currently go in the blocks at the jail. There's a block, and I can't speak for what's gonna happen, but I believe the intensive jail treatment participants will be in their own block over here, and we go into that block to teach.
Yeah.
And the ones like work release that are obviously in and out will be in the classroom at our facility. As far as rec,
That's the tricky part.
Good. So, Michelle, I don't know if she's speaking, just asking if there's any other comments or input regarding the program classroom. Michelle, if I heard you correctly, programming is delivered in the day.
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that because you don't have the space, or that's the preference on how you want to do it?
A mixture of both. Right now, it eliminates jailers having to go into the block and say, you, and take them up to the visitation room to do
Okay.
classes. So it eliminates a lot of traffic back and forth, and you would want them all in one block anyway. And so we just go into the block. Everyone in that block is like in the intensive jail treatment. Right now, because of overcrowding, we're not doing female classes. We're hopeful to get those started back up, but we are in the male block. I believe there's 20 in that block. Joe, here's that. I don't.
As far as
Okay.
why we're doing
So, I guess from the commissioners or from the sheriff's office, the other, can you go back? Yeah. It sounds like that and maintaining the 8 beds is the preferred option.
that. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just,
Okay. So Bill, is there anything else, floor plan, layout wise, get on the agenda?
No, there's nothing else that I have on the,
Okay. So, just to reiterate, another alternate we came up with, and I don't think you'll have any issues with this one, but I mentioned, I believe, during the February 15th presentation regarding the existing concrete slab and the extent in which that is going to be saw cut to put in sanitary and thickened slabs for masonry walls, that kind of thing. There will be quite a bit of existing concrete slab removal to accommodate that. And obviously, we'll install what we need to install and then patch it back with concrete. We are suggesting we take an alternate bid, and I think I mentioned this on February 15th, to provide a stain and sealer. I think it will help improve the aesthetics of, a patched concrete floor. We'll still see where it's patched, I'm sure you would imagine. But we did reach out to Maxwell Construction. We have a relationship with them, work with them on other projects, renovation type projects as well. They suggested it might be just as cost effective for a contractor to come in and remove the entire concrete slab and provide an all new concrete slab. So we would suggest that we do that as an alternate bid as well. base bid would be, to saw cut and remove the patch, and then give the contractor an opportunity, if it's, just a few $1,000s more for a entirely new concrete slab, that may be something that the commissioners might want to consider. Again, we're just identifying the cost and giving the commissioners the flexibility. And then another alternate that I know we suggested or spoke about is the roof. We would create an allowance as part of the base bid for a contractor to include with this bid to make the necessary remedial repairs to the roof, and then take an alternate bid for a complete roof replacement.
Bless you.
Any comments from commissioners, sheriff's office, Michelle?
Any more comments from you two?
Nothing. I get, rec is something we'll have to figure out from our end. Maybe we can come up with some type of solution or idea for that. And then one thing, and it's something maybe we can look at down the line, but while we have Stanley on, and it would be a different thing we'd have to bring in. We do need to probably have a room where we can conduct video interviews with inmates other than bringing them over to the jail, especially when there's bad.
And when you're talking about video interview, does that need to be here in the annex or the existing jail?
Well, other than taking the female inmates back and forth through the alley, I mean, if we have bad weather, whatever, but I mean, we have detectives coming in quite often to interview inmates, but it's just something we need to keep in mind for down the road.
So could you go there and plan? Could the attorney professional visitation conference room serve that purpose, kind of a dual purpose?
I think so. I just think attorneys are going to be a little hesitant to know that they're in a room that can be used to record interviews, but I mean, obviously, attorney-client privilege, we're not going to.
Yeah, so
But that's going to be operated by separate.
Yeah.
Would you prefer that video audio recording to be overt or covert? I say that because if it's overt, we could put a obvious red light, up in the ceiling.
That's what we have now, and that would, I think that would ease any concerns from the attorneys if we could do that. So kind of make it dual purpose. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Mickey, you still on?
I'm still here.
Did you catch all that?
Not all of it. I heard you talking about covert and overt in that room.
Yeah, so they were looking for a space to conduct interviews without needing to transfer inmates back and forth to the existing jail. So we thought this professional visitation could pull double duty. There was some discussion, concern about attorneys possibly being concerned about, being in an interview room and being recorded. So we talked about overt, covert, indicated their existing system is overt. So I was thinking we could put an obvious red light, somewhere that when the recording system is on.
So are you talking about the attorney being in one building and the inmate being in another?
No. So
Okay,
what we're talking
you
about.
talked about transporting, that's why I asked.
No, so that professional visitation, 1014, it's serving two purposes. One, attorney inmate conference room. And we want to make sure that the attorney and inmate are comfortable that the conversation is not being recorded. So hence the obvious red light. The second purpose of that room would be for recorded interviews. And that's where we would, want an overt system, and it's very obvious that the system is being recorded.
Okay, yeah, that's possible. We could put a light in that room.
No. Okay.
And at that point, the camera would not need to be covert.
Right. Exactly. Okay. What other comments does anybody have? try to be respectful of time. I know we're 6 minutes past.
Well, Scott, you've given us all a lot to think about, and there's been some items come to discussion today that I certainly didn't think about, and I'm sure others have had the same feeling. I would suggest that as you come to better conclusions on some of the items that we've discussed today, and I know that the sheriff and the community corrections director is going to certainly be thinking on some of these items and may have some further suggestions that they either forward them to you or to us, and we no doubt will have to have a little bit of further discussion on some of these items.
Sure. One thing I would ask, Dale, thank you, I completely agree. One thing I would ask is if there's communication that needs to be forwarded to me, make absolutely sure the commissioners are copied, please. And we will do the same.
Okay, so any communications on this, you want it to go directly to Scott Carnegie?
That's fine. I just want to make sure that you all are copied,
Okay,
and I will do the same.
all right. Yeah, that helps for everyone to know what's going back and forth.
Okay. So we will continue to work on this. Thank you for everybody's input. It's helpful in advancing the project. We will be requesting another follow-up meeting with some additional follow-up items to review with you. One thing that I guess I would ask, kind of go out there with a parting comment, and I'm not necessarily looking for input, but if you all could be thinking about a name, what makes sense as far as a name on the front of this building? And I say that because, you know, obviously the name of the building means a lot. It's an indication of where people are to go. I don't know that we necessarily want to call it, you know, Fayette County Jail Annex. I don't know. It means you may be, you know, people showing up there that really need to be doing business at the main jail. If we call it work release, well, you have another work release right next door. So just think about what you think makes sense, and we can talk about that next time.
Okay. Yeah, that's a detail that I certainly haven't given much thought to.
All right, anybody else have any parting comments?
Anybody in the room have anything else? I think we're all done on this end.
Good. Appreciate everybody's participation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, fellas. We'll be talking to you next time.
All right, thank you.
Bye. Recording stopped.
Okay, having no further business.
Adjourn, I second that.
Motion by Dale, second by Tracy to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
3 ayes. We're adjourned. Thank you all very much.